Hey everybody, welcome back to Travel Trailer Nation. Today we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of people don't want to think about, but it's very important, and that is fires in an RV. And let's face it, a fire can start anytime in an RV, while it's on the road, sitting in a campground, or as you'll see in a minute, even sitting on a dealer lot. Now, the National Fire Protection Agency reports that approximately 2,000 RVs start on fire every year, and they stated that it only takes 30 seconds for that fire to burn out of control, and that's hardly enough time for me to throw Tammy through the window and then grab Eva and get her out of the trailer. So from 2018 to 2020, those fires resulted in 15 deaths and 125 injuries. Now, it's interesting to note, Eva's acting up a little bit right now. It's interesting to note that some insurance companies really put it closer to 4,000 RV fires a year. And so let's talk through just some recent examples. April of 2025, Shades of Sherwood Campground in Mineola Township in Minnesota. A cigarette discarded by a camper near an RV caused several travel trailers to start on fire, and they actually burned all the way down to the ground. Fortunately, there were no fatalities in that fire. There were no injuries. September of 2025, Acapulco Campground on Lake Murray in Lexington County, South Carolina, destroyed 6 travel trailers, a vehicle, and a shed. And unfortunately, one person was actually airlifted to the Augusta Burn Center. November of 25, in Kansas City, Kansas, 11 campers were destroyed on a Camping World lot, and that is the second time that I have heard about Camping World fire. A year earlier, there was one that had several campers burned to the ground, but this time it was 11 of them going to the ground. December of 25, fire destroyed at least 2 and damaged up to 4 more RVs, displacing several residents just before Christmas, and the blaze started from an electrical malfunction in one camper and spread rapidly due to close proximity. No injuries were reported. And then in December of 25, at the Chico, California RV park, there were 2 RVs destroyed that burned all the way to the ground. Again, no injuries there. January of 26, so more recently, Tall Pines Campground saw a camper fully involved in a fire, and no one was in the camper at the time. So on a side note, when there's a fire at a camper that's even near you, the odds of you catching on fire because of the way campgrounds are structured is pretty great. So if you see a fire near you in a camper, get out of your camper. That's all I've got to say about that. Now, there are different times when fires can occur. So there's en route fires, which is when you're heading to a campground or storage or wherever. Mechanical and electrical fires cause roughly 75% of the vehicle fires, and that's why I've said multiple times, always check under the trailer at your wiring and resolve any electrical issues right away. And then many of these fires that were en route actually had to do with either brake shoes overheating or bearings overheating, and that causes a great deal of heat, and it doesn't take long before you've got a fire going. So I would suggest that if you don't have like I believe they're called like a thermal temperature gun, get one, and then when you stop for gas or you stop at waysides, go ahead and point that at your hub and get a temperature reading. I guess it's an infrared heat gun. My TPMS, tire pressure monitoring system, will also notify me if all of a sudden I get an extraordinary temperature swing. But also propane fires can happen when you're en route as well, which is why some states actually have regulations prohibiting you to have your propane on when you're traveling. And I'm not going to get into whether you should or should not have your LP fridge running when you're driving, and I'm a little bit removed from that discussion now because I have a 12-volt refrigerator, so I'm a little insulated from that discussion. But before this, that's all I ever had was propane refrigerators, and I was always a little uncomfortable having a propane refrigerator because we leave our girls, the dogs. Now we only have Eva, but before we were a multiple dog family in the trailer when we were gone. And that being said, the propane fridge has a much better track record than the 12-volt refrigerator. So she's such a goof. Regularly, though, check your propane fittings, hoses, and always check your propane detectors before you go on a trip. Now, fires can also happen while you're camping. So never leave your appliances, your fireplaces, your space heaters, or fans running when you're not there. And don't overload any circuit by plugging in an extension cord to some sort of a portable heating device that isn't rated for that kind of a load. That'll cause the wires to melt, and you'll definitely have a fire. And it's just too much current for an underrated extension cord to take. And then always plug directly into an outlet, and remember not to overload the overall capacity. And I will say this about the Imagine. One of the first techs that worked on it said he was surprised at how many outlets were on one breaker, one circuit. So that was kind of surprising to me. And also, don't store anything flammable near your cooking surfaces. So that means like paper towels, your olive oil, for instance, napkins, towels. That's just an accident waiting to happen. And then keep your outdoor appliances like grills and griddles away from the trailer. You'd be surprised at how many fires have actually occurred that way. So precautions, make sure that your shore cord is in good condition, and invest in an EMS system like the Progressive PTX 50 or the PTX 30, depending on, what amp trailer you've got. And make sure that is in and you're using it. That's going to prevent a lot of issues from happening, like under voltage, over voltage, open grounds, open neutral, and the list goes on. And I've had this PTX 50 now for, I want to say, 11 years, and it's saved me a few times from having issues. So keep that in mind. Also, make sure that your CO2 detector, your propane leak alarm, and all the smoke detectors are working, and they'll save your life. You do not want to have your trailer burned down because you didn't buy a couple batteries for your smoke detector. And then my recommendation would also be to buy an extra 1 or 2 fire extinguishers for in the trailer. Typically, your fire extinguisher is located by the exit door, and that might not be a great location depending on where the fire breaks out. So it's better to be safe and have maybe one in your living room, one in your bedroom. They don't have to, just easily accessible. They don't have to be sticking out like a sore thumb, but get them in there, and then regularly check them to make sure that they're fully charged. And understand where your emergency exit windows are located and how they operate. We've got 2 in this trailer. We had 1 in the last trailer, which was in the bedroom. So I've got basically 3 exits in the Delta 294RK. I have a big window behind the couch. I have the egress window in the bedroom, and then we have the regular exit door. And it's probably a good idea, especially if you have children, to conduct a drill just to make sure everybody knows, becomes habitual on where they go and what they do. And then know your exact location too, so that if you have to call 911 because you've got an emergency, you know exactly what address to give them. I always have a sheet before we go on any trip that has the campground address, their contact number. I have a lot more information in there, but not all of it is related to the campground. But make sure that you've got that. And also there's stickers that are out there so that if you're gone, you could put there's stickers that say, rescue my pet. So, that's something to think about putting on if you're, leaving your puppy in a crate in there for a while, or if your puppy's trustworthy enough to actually be out of a crate. All of ours were until this one. She's not a trustworthy puppy, but she's very affectionate. And then maintain all of your mechanical items like your bearings and your brakes. And I know I sound like a broken record when I talk about bearing maintenance, but I would definitely make sure you're doing your bearing maintenance once a year. If you have a really small trailer, you could probably eke it out a little bit longer, but I would definitely do my bearing maintenance yearly. And then in event of a fire, if it's a small fire and you think you can take care of it real quick with a fire extinguisher, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, get out of the trailer and get everybody else out. And then once you've gotten out, call 911, let them know the address where you're at, tell them to send, fire and rescue. And then if there's campers next to you, start banging on their door and tell them to get out of their campers. So In conclusion, not a really great topic to talk about, something no one really wants to think about, but as you can see, this stuff does happen, and it's better to be safe than to be sorry. I would rather save my life and get out of my trailer and let it burn to the ground than otherwise. So anyway, that's it for now, guys. Until next time, happy camping.